The worst Shonen Jump manga, what does that look like exactly? Some people will throw around manga they dislike, or maybe something that disappointed them with its ending, like The Promised Neverland or Jujutsu Kaisen recently. If you frequently read the magazine's cancelled manga, you might point out to something like Samurai 8, Musashi Kishimoto's flop after creating Naruto, or maybe a comedy series you don't think is funny like Protect Me Shugamaru or Ichigoki's Under Control. But I'm here to tell you that worse exists, and while all of this is subjective, there is one metric we can rely on to give a sense of how liked a series is, as well as how good it is: chapter count. Now, plenty of well-liked manga haven't lasted long in Jump. There are cancelled darlings that many people love, but usually the lower that chapter count, the faster a series got cancelled, which results in those series being some of the more disliked or forgotten about. To give some context to you, right now the lowest you're likely to see a series go is around 17 or 18 chapters. In 2024, a few series hit this, like Kyokuto Necromance and Psych House. Go back a few more years though into the early 2020s, and then further back into the 2010s, and this number begins to drop even more. You might even see series reach 15 or 14 chapters, and then you can go back even further and you might see a series that hits 10 chapters. These are works that barely got room to breathe and were only in the magazine for 10 weeks before ending. 10 chapters is the most common lowest chapter count you'll find in the magazine, something you'd see in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, but what we're talking about today came out in 2008 and breaks this rule by being the quickest cancellation in Shonen Jump history. Chagecha, the manga we'll be talking about today, is an outlier, only lasting 8 chapters in a time when nothing else ever went that low, and might very well be the worst Shonen Jump manga to ever exist, so let's talk about it and its author. Full name: Chagecha. Start date: September 13th, 2008. End date: November 1st, 2008. Total chapters: 8. Yoshio Sawai would begin their manga career at the turn of the millennium by getting their one-shot Yamanaka Action Oda Theater published in the winter issue of Akamaru Jump in 2000. Following this, a Bobobo-bo would get a one-shot version in Akamaru Jump's summer issue just months later, and then 2 more one-shots in back-to-back issues of Shonen Jump's 46th and 47th issues of the same year. Bo-Bobo was exceedingly popular at the time, and mere months after these one-shots would get published, a full series would begin in Shonen Jump issue 12 of 2001. Bobobo-bo, I don't really remember how many bows I need to say, would follow the titular main character as he fights the oppressive regime of the hair hunters using his Fist of the Nose Hair technique, as well as help from his many quirky friends. Sawai would be known for his absurdist style of comedy, mixing in references with random events to keep you constantly on your toes and laughing. Without a doubt, Sawai had an explosive and massively successful manga career initially, arriving at the scene and in no time getting a hit series that would last a good few years, even being rebooted in Shinsetsu Bobobo and finally ending in 2007. It also had an anime adaptation, countless bits of merchandise, and even a limited release in the West for both its manga and anime, which has left a big impression on a lot of people, as I still meet big fans of Bobobo to this day who absolutely adore this manga. During Bobobo's run, Sawai would publish a few other one-shots like Gekisen Jaken Shima, where a group of people fight on an island with rock, paper, scissors, as well as Man, a title that's a bit self-explanatory, all of which would be combined into a one-shot collection pretty early on in Sawai's career. Months after Bobobo's conclusion, Sawai would jump right back with a one-shot named Kuro Fukuru, which is seemingly a delinquent manga where the protagonist is an old man, likely playing around with settings and ideas for his next big hit manga. But Shonen Jump and the general public wouldn't get a funny hit like Bobobo. Instead, they'd get the reviled manga that this video is about, Chagecha. Chagecha would begin to terrorize the world in issue 42 of Shonen Jump in 2008, introducing us to its setting of Gure Tokyo, a city where delinquents from all around the country have gathered to become Yankee legends. We are immediately assaulted by some of the worst scan quality ever, which makes the following dump of human missiles, talking cats, dragon ninjas, and a man with a giant shit on a stick even more confusing than it would already be. The translation also isn't very good, but even so, Chagecha makes little sense as we encounter the titular main character, the guy with the shit on the stick, on a train, who then grabs a tree out of the window and smokes it, calling it one of nature's cigarettes. We learn that Chagecha, a student of Gekiyatsu High, is out for blood, as the students of Gorilla High have beaten up or even killed his pigeon friends. Along with this, Masato joins him, a first year who ends up idolizing him. That's pretty much the extent of his character. To give you a sense of how confounding the manga is, but drop this info and then Chagecha starts talking about, and I'll read this verbatim from the text, ordinary high schoolers without powers float down this river with the watermelons thanks to the Yankees in town. And they continue to drift eternally on this river where grannies are waiting to pick them up. This is one of the gure laws of this town. I assume there's some joke or reference here, but every single page of this manga features text or a joke like this, making it near impossible to make sense out of it, which is fitting considering how the manga looks, especially when the duo reaches Gorilla High School. I think the intention is for it to be balls to the walls crazy, though it comes off as an illegible mess instead. Chagecha then pumps his own heart to increase his strength, activating his deadly technique, Human Bike, which takes out all of his enemies. I at least kind of understand this technique since delinquents, specifically Bosozoku, were very connected to their motorcycles, but even knowing about this, it just wasn't very funny to me. There are some fun jokes, like in chapter 2, where the lackeys of Chagecha's next adversary unfurl their pompadours to make a carpet for their boss to walk on, and this graph showing the school's hierarchy with Gekiyatsu all the way in the gutter, but not even being in contention for the most dangerous schools. These are jokes that take a pre-established idea and overemphasize them, like taking the pompadours to the extreme or showing you how extremely shitty Gekikatsu is with the pre-established ideas of a hierarchy chart. Unfortunately, it either overuses jokes like this or prefers to keep things random instead. These are probably some of the only good examples of jokes I could find in the manga. Among all the random jokes and meeting characters here and there, we gradually learn what the manga is all about, and it's Chagecha beating down all the other Yankee schools. To do this, he gathers some allies in the form of the other Gekikatsu students, with the most notable ones being Himawari Kawai, who fights with a bowling ball phone strap charm, which I think is pretty cool, as well as this rabbit, who has maybe the only really great joke of the series, where we see the flashbacks of the Great Rabbit Wars he was a part of.
I understand your feelings. Rabbits too were born in an era of full combat.
A rival school, Sekiranon High, then attacks, initiating a ranked battle where teams of 7 from each school go head to head in an arena, and it's a free-for-all for all characters as they rattle off special moves and make nonsensical jokes. This all builds up to the final 8th chapter where Chagecha and Doraji, another character, use a fusion ability to wipe out the rival school, resulting in Gekikatsu High winning and raising their rank. The characters celebrate their win and head off to the next battle, with the manga suddenly ending there. The story synopsis section for this one is a bit shorter than usual, and that's probably because it's 8 chapters long. It isn't very long at all, and most of its runtime was just filled with gags. So now let's dig into why this failed and why it's so bad. Expectations for Sawai's next series were likely high by fans at the time, and I think a core reason why Chagecha didn't land might be due to it copy-pasting elements from Bo-Bobo with only some changes in setting. You have the Yankee clans and the Hare Hunters from Bobobo. Both Chagecha and Bobobo go up against these big groups with a number of allies, some looking pretty similar design-wise. There's a short flashback of the main character in chapter 1. There's also a hierarchy of villains with 4 elites at the top. These are both things both series have. And when you add Sawai's style of comedy on top of this, perhaps people were expecting something better or different. The novelty of Sawai's style of comedy may have worn off too, or comedic preferences may have changed over the years since Bo-Bobo was serialized. Chagecha also had to contend with many other gag manga like Kochikame, Sket Dance, Inumaru Dashi, Barihaken, and Beautifuku Jaguar, with Inumaru Dashi debuting at a similar time and going on to last much longer. If anything, I think Jump likely saw a better response from that and decided to cut Chagecha as the magazine was oversaturated with comedy manga already. But why was Chagecha 8 chapters long? Was it really that bad? Even the quickest axes at the time made it to 10 chapters. My best guess is that Sawai got an axe notice early on, and instead of ending the series at 10 or even 12 chapters, as the next new series Meister would begin 4 issues later, he decided to wrap it up in 8 with him not wanting to do it anymore. The rank battle might have been a decent stopping point, so likely due to a combination of a lot of factors, it was decided that 8 chapters would be its end. A core reason why Chagecha is bad is actually not really its fault, it's the scan quality and translation which aid its disgustingness. Just look at the English scans versus the Japanese ones, the difference is night and day. This doesn't excuse Chagecha from being bad though, its core structure is fragmented. The first 4 chapters and last 4 chapters almost feel like a different manga to me. The speed at which his jokes are thrown at you feels off kilter, the jokes themselves are more referential, obscure, or just plain don't land. I read some Bobobo to compare it to this, and I found it a lot funnier while retaining the same level of randomness. I still don't like it very much, but occasionally I would chuckle and I see the appeal, whereas Chagecha feels sanded down and is too bizarre for its own good. As the current translation stands, I think this might be the worst Shonen Jump manga in English. It barely makes sense, it looks horrible, and disgusting is even a word I'd use to describe it. Aside from a few jokes, it's never funny, and the central battle plot revolving around the delinquents is neither original nor interesting. But that's just my opinion, so how about we hear what everyone else thinks of Chagecha? I actually bamboozled my Discord server into reading this as an April Fool's joke, so they had to suffer alongside me. I'm sure you've all noticed the date today, and you were never meant to win this poll. Muddy, Protect Me Shugamaru, Avocado, do you think any of them would have actually won on today? The truth is, the game was rigged from the start. The reactions from them also didn't disappoint. Many members of the Discord opted to not even write anything down, but instead describe their pain through various memes like these.
What the hell was that?
It was perfect, but no, you just had to blow it up.
No, you!
For the first actual review, Fullmetal couldn't get through more than 1 chapter, which in this instance is more than fair. In a 50-page chapter, they found every single joke missed, nothing landed, and they even found it difficult to tell where jokes even began or ended. Manga and the whole process of the Axe Files should be fun, so if you're not some weird manga masochist like me, I totally get not wanting to read all of this. I will not think any less of anyone who did. In fact, I'd probably think less of the people who actually read all of Chagecha, and that's saying something because I've read it twice, and I'm making a video on it. Help me.
Trenton, if you don't read Chagecha and make an axe file on it,
Yes.
we'll fill the room.
Bulbasaur316 described their brain hurting from reading and that it was hot garbage. Cactus then calls Chikinga a fever dream that's pure nonsense. Chikengo Gajesha Gagejecha. He couldn't understand what the actual name was, so he's given me all of these fake names, and it's quite funny. But he also called it Bad Poo Poo Comic, and then exclaims his head hurts before having a nosebleed. And if you've suffered from similar symptoms to this, such as excessive head pain, nosebleeds, and slurring of speech, then you might be suffering from shitty manga syndrome. Thankfully, there is a cure. It's TrentinArt Patreon. And for just $1 a month, all of these ailments can be cured. TrentinArt Patreon uses state-of-the-art yapping technology to give you the latest exclusive videos on better manga. Also, preventative measures like bonus Patreon Axe Files polls, so shitty manga like Chagecha never get voted in again. Wow, isn't that great? But wait, there's more. If you order now at the $3 tier, you'll also get a unique little doodle to represent you, just like all the other cool kids. Amazing. And, as an extra bonus, we'll also throw in this Trentin brand can opener and a can of expired soup, which definitely isn't just stock we want to get rid of. TrentinArt patron may not be able to cure nosebleeds, slow speech, head pain, or any physical ailments other than bad manga, like Chagecha may still be voted in for the X-Files too, and Trentin's endless ramblings may drive you insane or give you similar side effects. For legal purposes, all this is a joke, and Trentin takes no responsibility for any harm Chagecha has caused. Jinwon had a pretty visceral reaction, calling it a miserable read, which didn't make them laugh once, calling it something written by a fake class clown given pity laughs. Santi isn't even sure why they finished Chagecha, as it was so terrible, and it sounds like they've already wiped it from their brain due to the trauma it inflicted upon them. But hey, at least the translator enjoyed it, right? Aspiring creator stated that despite being so short, it feels long, and uses the word assaults to describe its incessant need to throw characters, ideas, and jokes at you. What is happening is also something I think everyone reading has asked themselves too while reading this, and the sentiment that it's the worst manga aspiring creator has read is probably held by at least half of the people commenting here today. El Manu commits the sin of saying Bone Collection is worse, and maybe on a reread I'll change my mind on that, but I don't appreciate this Kirarazaka slander. Boners unite. Jade says, fuck you Trentin, I'm not rereading that dog shit. What? That's completely understandable. I didn't want to reread it either, frankly. I also fully agree, and I'm also shocked that this got serialized and struggled to find anything enjoyable about it, aside from maybe one joke. Which Jess Anime brings up again, the best panel of the entire manga, the rabbit joke. Which Sarah also brings up the rabbit joke as the best part, as did a few others. Alongside this, they bring up the scan quality as being bad, which we'll touch on in a bit too. Kinky gave a big review though. Ultimately, I think it goes on to say it's very bland with no real redeeming factors or funny jokes. Violent described it as a manga. Yeah, it is, though did try to enjoy its wackiness and designs for what they were, which I appreciate. I think calling it way too stimulating in all categories is very accurate too. Furthermore, Chizu posits that it could perhaps be peak fiction, as it tackles themes such as systematic bullying of Japanese school society, the portrayal of Yankees through the lens of a tyrannical government, esoteric absurdism presented in comedy, machoism and the ways that men interact with this ideal, as well as the age-old myth of Sisyphus. Could Chagecha actually be a misunderstood masterpiece, a prime example of the strengths of the Heisei manga, the berserk of gags? The only piece of art Chizu could even compare it to is Tommy Wiseau's brilliant modern classic 2003's The Room, which I think we're onto something here. Nidhogger then backs Chizu up, stating that after some careful evaluation of Chagecha's intricate and subtle theme, its discourse surrounding meta-humor in the face of the ever-changing zeitgeist, and its distinct approach to one-of-a-kind characters, in a word, Chagecha could be described as... We actually have another full review with Lumi, who goes through each character, stating they're either unnoteworthy, lame with Chagecha, or in Doraji's case, actively make the manga worse. Lumi also didn't find the art bad, which I think is fair when we set aside the scan quality. Some designs can be fun in a silly sort of way. The writing and pacing were rough, and I think Lumi nails that it's trying for so many jokes so fast, it just becomes a messy cacophony of bad jokes that don't really leave room for much plot. There's also a point made here about the scans being next to unreadable sometimes with how small the panels can be, and the effort to explain the jokes rather than localize them or aim for a translation of some sort likely ruins any potential fun while making pages feel even more messy and cramped. Cerulean brings this up in their review too, and knew about Chagecha's reputation beforehand, and it still managed to exceed it by being even worse. They also note that even though it suffers from these translation and scan issues, its already poor and ugly character designs and art hinder it even more. Its pursuit of being gross and funny at all costs strips its characters down to being jokes for vehicles. I meant vehicles for jokes. I don't know why I mixed that up in the script. And makes everything overwhelming. Its pursuit of being gross and funny at all costs strips its characters down to being vehicles for jokes and makes everything overwhelming. Joni also joins in with the translation woes, thinking even machine translation would do better, which I think is some scathing critique. The fact that the team on this didn't even evaluate it to think if it was readable for other people is pretty startling though. Joni also brings up that the actual content of the manga isn't great either in its designs and lol-xd random humor, but all of this coupled with the scans makes it an unreadable and senseless mess. It really is just super ass. The sentiment from people like Cerulean that they're glad it was only 8 chapters long is really funny too. Like, people hate this so viscerally because it's such a negative reading experience. It's not just a bad manga, it's mentally and kind of physically disgusting to read on multiple levels. Thankfully, it should be the very worst thing we'll ever read on the X-Files, at least for a long while. Before we end, I do want to bring up the idea that even if Chagecha did have a flawless translation with nice pages, it would still fall flat, but as it is now, it does detract from the work, and this isn't meant to be a dig at the people who did attempt to scan and translate this either. For one, they were working on this back in 2008 with, I presume, less experience and access to things scanlators would have now. While I definitely think people could do better, by no means do I want my and others' words here to act as an attack towards the people who scanlated this or as something discouraging for anybody who does want to translate or scan older manga in the future. If anything, take a look at Chagecha to make sure you don't make the same mistakes. As you can probably guess, by the very harsh cancellation Chagecha received, Sawai would struggle with manga post this, releasing the children's picture book Kirarincho no Obake Festa in 2009 before disappearing for a time. Honing his skills and then returning in 2012 with something tried and true. He'd go back to Bobobo, starting Fuwari Donpachi, a spin-off of Bobobo featuring one of its core characters. This would serialize for a few years in Saikyo Jump before getting a sequel called Honori Donpachi and moving to Jump Plus. All the Donpachi spin-offs have been translated into English too if you'd like to read them. Since then, Sawai has put out a few one-shots like Mint's Dining Room, which sees a girl called Maki conjure a demon while trying to cook her mother's old hamburger recipe. And the most recent thing we've seen from Sawai is 2021's Jump Plus one-shot Frontline Spirits, which celebrates the 20th anniversary of Bo-Bobo-bo. This is a gag story about a medic and a soldier on a spirit battlefield full of wacky shenanigans. His art style looks much cleaner now, the backgrounds are well drawn, characters are well formed, and there's a focus on cuteness now alongside gags. At the very least, it seems Sawai has evolved as an artist, and hopefully they're making things they still enjoy, despite the shift from their older comedies like Chagecha. And that brings this X-File on the shortest ever Shonen Jump manga to a close. Perhaps this is the very worst Shonen Jump has to offer, or maybe in the future I'll cover something even more reviled. Either way, please stick around and subscribe for more videos like this. I have plenty of X-Files now on all sorts of cancelled series from Weekly Shonen Jump, cataloguing the good and bad from modern classics to older things you might not be familiar with. I also make videos on other aspects of Shonen Jump like its history, where I go through the magazine year by year. And if you really like what I make and would be willing to support me, you can through my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, like I mentioned earlier, where you'll get access to some exclusive videos and polls to decide what manga I cover next on the X-Files, with your name in the credits of every video. As well as this, at the $3 tier, you'll also get a unique little doodle drawn by me to represent you in the credits, like the following cool people: Kinocha, Jade, Kazukugaru, Soroquel Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lay Sloggett, Chris P. Bacon, Cho Henshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Weeby Boy, Wurzel, Violent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vina Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, Crash, 41IZ, and also Hilltop, Vako Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, John Sanford, Color, and Hongu Mailing at the $1 tier. Thank you all so much for being patrons. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.